Hey everybody, how's everybody doing? Brent from the Similitude of Prague here. Hope everybody's well. Today on the channel we are going to review the new Anubis album, The Unforgivable. So sit back and I'll tell you what this album's about. So before we get to said album, let me give you a brief introduction to who's in the band. First of all, on vocals, guitar, and percussion, we have Robert James Moulding. On keyboards, soundscapes, 12-string guitars, bass pedals, and vocals, we have David Eaton. On electric and acoustic guitars, as well as backing vocals, we have Dean Benison. Also on bass guitar and vocals, we have Anthony Stewart. And rounding out the band is a gentleman by the name of Stephen Eaton, who plays drums, percussion, and backing vocals. Anubis has been around since 2004 when they were formed in Sydney, Australia. They have 7 studio albums and 4 live albums. Their studio albums are, in 2009, they released their debut album called 230503. In 2011, they released A Tower of Silence. In 2014, they released Hitchhiking to Byzantium. In 2017, they released The Second Hand. Then in 2018, they did kind of I'm going to say an unplugged album, but that would be the closest thing to it, where they took songs from their previous 4 albums and then an unincluded song and kind of reworked them for, I believe it was something to do to um, raise money for the following tour. And then we go to 2020's Homeless, which is a tremendous album. And then, of course, this year we have The Unforgivable. And before we dive right into the music, I'm going to give you just a little bit of a history and what the album was about, because I think it's important to know the context before you jump in and listen to it. The Unforgivable is a 45-minute epic length, one track broken into 10 sections that features a long musical journey on vinyl, CD, stream, however you ordered it. And it's going to be on 2 23-minute suites of the LP on each side. It's a narrative concept album that tells the story of a young man's falling in and subsequently escape from a religious cult called the Legion of Angels in the America Northwest. Seduced by an attractive female leader, he finds himself gaslit into tempting murder, the subsequent failing, and the fleeing from the cult. The album was written when the Homeless tour was cut short by COVID. Okay, let's talk about the music, guys. And I am delighted and happy to say that The Unforgivable still has that Anubis feel that you would have heard back in the debut album, as well as A Tower Full of Secrets. I must say, though, having said that, it is more of a streamlined form. This album, like I said earlier, features 10 shorter tracks that make up the album in a 46-minute runtime. The one downside that this album has to me is that the songs don't have a chance to really expand themselves into some of those prog epics that we are used to. Like so many albums before it and afterwards, this album is very, how would you say, has a very recurring theme to it. It features a radio broadcast about tornadoes at the beginning of the album, and after the title track, the last song, you hear the same broadcast about tornadoes, giving this kind of a, I guess, reoccurring theme that it kind of loops itself. I know there's many albums that do that, and of course, I should have wrote notes and wrote down a few, but can't come up with any off the top of my head. The introductory track also features a soft musical theme from the last part, and the reoccurring nature of the album, coupled with many media players, default settings to play albums on a loop, makes for an addictive listen. The 46 minutes seems to fly by, and by the time the album ends, you're pretty much ready to listen to it all over again. And this sets up the perfect Circle. I'll have to say the band puts their best foot forward on the first song on the album that we're here. It's called A Mark of Cain. I'm astonished that they actually didn't use this as the leading single from the album because it is probably one of the more catchier songs on it. Features some strong musical themes throughout. Right from the starts, the drummer plays an odd, unpredictable pattern that does suggest the song is bursting and full of unbridled energy. It's a far cry from most of the plundering standard songs you hear these days. During the chorus, a jazzy improvised piano fills between each line, adds character, and quickly becomes what you're looking for about in an Anubis song. Then the album takes a sharp left turn and goes into a little bit of a deep doom metal territory. This is at times my least favorite song on the album, and sometimes it is one of my favorite. It really depends on the mood I am. I love the contrast between the two parts of the song, and I think that's what makes it work, but I also think that's why sometimes I love it and sometimes I don't like it. It just sometimes, to me, maybe doesn't fit its section in the album. Maybe could have left later, but having said that, I realize this is a concept album and maybe it can't. It just it seems to lack. It just seems to have too much energy coming right after the Mark of Cain. Next, I want to talk about a song a little bit called One Last Thing, and this slows the music down but adds a lot of needed drama. It has a very, very beautiful coda at the end, and this takes us to the theatrical side two of the album, which begins with the sound of a passing train. The train makes a strong rhythmic percussion sound, and I reckon that Anubis missed a trick by not building up off that rhythm and into a start a new song. Instead, All Because of You begins in a subdued fashion before reprising the hard theme you heard in the chains earlier. Earlier, I said I was a little bit shocked that they didn't use the Mark of Cain as the leading single. The next track on the album, Back, that I want to talk about is what they used instead. It's not a bad song per se, but in my opinion, it's one of the more lesser interesting tracks on the album. And then I want to talk about the title track, which concludes the album with an epic fashion. This was clearly designed to bring down the house at concerts. It's a very happy ending, gives away to a slightly different reprise of the theme we heard earlier. Although it took a few attempts for this album to get its hooks in me, it has become a fast grower. Anubis should be very proud of this album, as of any other problems. I only found a very few weak spots. And that being said, I do hold this album as high acclaim as something like A Tower of Silence, even if it is more of a consistent album overall. And for a final rating, I'm giving this album the rating of excellent. Thanks, guys. We'll see you in the next video. Bye.